think boom.
Boom.
Hello and welcome to the Hackaday podcast. I'm Elliot Williams.
And I'm Kristina Panos.
This is episode 218. We'll be talking about open source AI, the rescue of Salyut 7, and the homework machine. Boy, howdy, have we got a ton of news this week.
It's true.
Let's see, just today, as we record this, we announced that Hackaday SuperCon is on for this year. It's going to be taking place November 3rd through 5th in the usual Pasadena, California location. I think basically if you've ever been to a SuperCon before, it's going to be like that all over again. And we can't wait. Super psyched to be going back to SuperCon. Of course, it's 6 months from now. And as James Newton pointed out in our Discord, we're like as far away from last year's SuperCon as we are from next year's SuperCon. So this is like the darkest it gets. From here on, it only gets brighter as we get closer and closer.
So right now we're at None More Black.
We're at SuperCon Apex. I thought that was a great way of thinking about it, and I'm stoked that someone else is looking as forward to SuperCon as I am. But in the meantime, if you think you want to give a talk, start thinking now, because in addition to announcing that we're going to be doing it, we put up the call for speakers and workshops both. So if you've got an idea of a talk, either a short one, 20 minutes, or a long one, 40 minutes, start thinking that up and submit your talk proposition.
Because there's a deadline.
Oh no. The deadline's still far away. If you're a procrastinator like me, you've got plenty of time. It's July 18th, but get on it. I think we'd be totally happy to see your talk proposal even as soon as next week. Start thinking about what you want to talk about. Start making your plans for November 3rd through 5th, and we will be planning SuperCon like mad for the next 6 months. Other Hackaday news, not entirely unrelated, the Hackaday Prize. We have, by the time you are hearing this, we will have announced the winners for the re-engineering education round, the first round. We don't actually have them finalized just yet as we are recording. So somewhere in between now and then, we'll open up the envelopes, see what our judges had to say, and write it up for you. So by the time you're hearing this, you probably even already know who won, and I don't.
Funny how that works.
We've also got 3 weeks left in the Assistive Tech Challenge, and we've already gotten a bunch of awesome entries for that. I'm really stoked with how that is working out this time around. So go have a look at those if you haven't, and go enter if you've got anything that can make people's lives a little bit better. The other thing, my God, how many contests do we run at once? The Op-Amp Challenge is also about halfway over. That ends, June something.
Yeah, June 6th.
So that's creeping up on us. 3 more weeks to go. Get in on your Op-Amp projects. Really stoked that we can run multiple challenges simultaneously, and everybody has enough projects underway that they're able to enter in all of them. So yeah, SuperCon, congratulations to the re-engineering education finalists, whoever you were or will have been. Assistive Tech Op-Amp Challenge. Go!
This is a journey into sound.
What's that sound?
What's that sound?
That brings us to the What's That Sound for this week. Have you had to listen to the sound yet?
It's time for me to listen right now.
All right.
Here we go.
Good luck.
Thank you.
I'll tell you what I told Tom.
Okay.
It's a household sound.
Oh.
And there's kind of a wheezy noise in there if you listen to it really carefully. Although if that helps or is misleading, I don't know.
I don't know. Compactor, garbage disposal.
That's the way Tom went with it too. Went to the heavy machinery. It's absolutely not. It's a coffee percolator.
Whoa. Okay.
Percolating, apparently.
Jeez.
It's quite all right. I mean, this is the way you absolutely shouldn't make your coffee. if you don't know what this sound was, you either, haven't suffered through percolator coffee or don't remember the 1950s or something. I don't know when people last used percolators. They seem ridiculous to me, but that's what it was. I figured nobody would get this one.
You don't like the margarita machine approach to coffee?
Basically. What does a percolator do?
Doesn't it just bubble it up and down?
Yeah, it like bubbles. I think you bubble like boiling water up through the coffee grounds and then it goes back in. My fear is that it actually boils the coffee after it's been coffeed as well. And that's not what you want.
No.
No.
That's not what I want.
That's not what you want. Anywho, coffee percolator, it's a retired way of making coffee. If anyone out there still percolates coffee, let us know in the comments.
And let us know why. Why?
If I've maligned your favorite coffee making method, let us know in the comments. So this one was a tough one. I will have to say 32 responses, of whom only 8 got it right. So great wrong answers include an iron lung, which I have no idea what an iron lung even sounds like. I'm going to have to find that one out for a future contest. Spice harvester on the planet Arrakis could be. Fireplace bellows. Yep, I can see that. What else? Hand cranked ice cream maker. That's a great machine. I have no idea how I'm going to get a sound of that, but I wish I could. Bellows was actually surprisingly often mentioned, and I think that's that funny little wheezy noise that the steam makes as it kind of pushes its way through the coffee. Steam press iron. Bunch of people were in on the steam and the pressure thing. So, good on all y'all. But unfortunately, coffee percolator. So here goes. We got 8 answers. I've got an 8-sided die. This is particularly well adapted. The number is 5. Congratulations to Rick, coffee percolator, brewing Folgers coffee packaged in 1982. I'm not 100% sure about the details on the end of that one, but coffee percolator is definitely the right answer. So I'll get in touch with you and get you a Hackaday Podcast t-shirt.
That reminds me of that Christmas Folgers commercial. I think they still run it when the kid comes from college real early in the morning and wakes everybody up with the smell of Folgers crystals.
I don't think I've seen a Folgers commercial in a million years.
No?
No.
They still run this one, I swear, and it's from the 80s.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Nostalgic TV commercials.
Oh, yeah, let me put the link in. Link to Folgers. This commercial where Billy comes home from college. Okay.
I thought you were typing a URL that fast. I was totally impressed. Well, if you don't percolate, stick around next week. We'll come up with another sound for you. So on to the hacks. This week I wanted to start off with kind of a newsy article. Leaked internal Google document claims open source AI will outcompete Google and OpenAI. I don't know. I wanted to put this out not just because AI is the frazzle-dazzle thing that's in the news everywhere, but because, frankly, we told you so. Basically, the backstory is that Meta/Facebook released a description of the training set and then released the weights for it, but you had to sign up for it and agree to a non-commercial use. But they would at least let you use it, which is more open than Google or OpenAI by a long shot. And then, of course, somebody leaked it, and you can get the model weights on torrents fairly easily. And that completely opened up this llama model coming out of Meta/Facebook for people to work on. In response to that, academics and other AI researchers have been tweaking on this model and have made it go from being kind of only mediocre to being basically on par with Google's Bard, which is just a little bit below ChatGPT-4 right now. This within 3 or 4 weeks on, small researcher budgets. None of this millions and millions of dollars that Google and OpenAI are throwing at it. But they were able to refine the llama model that came for free, basically, using low rank adaptation, which is, let's see, to really talk about it, you have to know too much about transformer models. All these large language models are kind of neural networks which try to predict the next word based on the string of words that have gone in so far. And then how much the past words should weight into the decision is dictated by this thing they call attention in the business. And that's how much attention the prediction of the next word it's going to spit out puts on each of the past words that you've been given so far. And there's this kind of matrix of weights that go on these past terms, past tokens. And that's what they're playing around with in this low rank adaptation. The point here is that if you look at the weights for these things, there's billions and billions and billions of weights. And if you want to update the weights, it's a very computationally expensive thing. If you look at like this transformer attention matrix, it's actually a lot smaller. And it's to the point that using low rank adaptation, you can update the way the model behaves using a desktop computer and not, millions of dollars worth of compute time. And that's kind of the real point here, is that once one of these models has leaked out, everybody can start hacking on it. And I think that's really awesome. The big I told you so here, at least Hackaday told you so, you have to go back to last year, September, when we wrote an article, Stable Diffusion and Why It Matters. And why it mattered is because there were a bunch of image generation AI models at the time, and they were all completely locked down and closed. And Stable Diffusion came out and was open, and you can play around with it. And all of a sudden it was worked into modeling workflows. They had plugins for Blender. People were writing crazy funny things to make lyrics for songs into videos and all sorts of stuff. All the fun stuff that hackers would do if they were given access to a crazy open source AI. In March, we wrote an article, Why Llama is a Big Deal, about how the kind of opening of this meta model would enable the open source community, independent hackers and researchers to play around with the same kind of large language models as GPT-4 and stuff. We told you so. And so this is, of course, Google's worst nightmare, or at least this is part of Google corporate's worst nightmare, is that they are going to have their lunch eaten by Facebook/Meta because they made their model open, and then the community has improved it so quickly that it's totally caught up with theirs in the period of 3 or 4 weeks. Questioning whether these things should be kept in their kind of funny commercial walled gardens like OpenAI wants it to be, despite their name, or whether they should be open and worked on by everyone and be democratic tools to play with and make the world better. And boy, if I'm not using slanted terminology there, I clearly have an opinion. Anyway, so it's really neat to see that the big players are scared of open source here and scared of what the community is going to do with these models, because I think they should be. I think we're about as clever as they are, and they should worry about it.
Yeah.
And so then this raises the big question, and I think this is one that people are worried about everywhere right now, and I don't have a good answer for yet, which is it better or worse to have these big AI models locked up behind paywalls, or is it better to have everyone able to play around with them as they wish? And the people who are worried about, AI being able to post so many tweets that nobody can believe anything they read on Twitter anymore want the companies to control these things and protect us from them. And I myself kind of lean toward the opposite, where if everybody can play around with them, everybody can improve them and work on them and figure out their weaknesses and make the world a safer place despite there being AI everywhere. I think I kind of believe that. On the other hand, it's definitely a crazy Wild Westy type world we're going to be walking into with that. Leaked models or not leaked models, you're not going to be able to stop this. And the cat's already out of the bag in a whole bunch of ways. And one that we haven't written up yet, but totally should, is this Open Assistant project. I'll throw the links in the show notes. But this is a project from Lion AI, and that's the open source consortium that put together the training set that Stable Diffusion was trained on, among other things. They don't actually own any of the data. It's basically just an index of the internet. And then you can use this to train your AI models on. They are also whipping up a large language model called Open Assistant that uses their data set but is completely open from the beginning to the end. And I think that's going to be extraordinarily interesting, because one of the other things that's coming out of this is that it may not be simply that just bigger and bigger data sets help your model behave better. It may also be that better data sets help your model behave better. And so, shocker, huh?
Yeah.
And so I really like the kind of Open Assistant / Lion approach of saying it's not quite enough for us to take Llama's computed model and work with that. We should go even one step further and say we should all be looking at how the selection of data that went into building the model was made as well. Keep your eyes on the Open Assistant project. Maybe we'll have to get Matthew Carlson to write up a piece on that too, because I promise you in 6 months I'll be here saying we told you so again.
So my first hack comes from, we're going to call them Rasmus 7IO because of the VII. Rasmus VII IO. And this takes the humble solderless breadboard and turns it up several notches, with the help of op amps coupled to LEDs. Each line of the breadboard, in fact, has an LED, which makes for a very tall breadboard in the end, what with all the wires and such underneath. But it's a really, really neat idea, and the point of which, by the way, is to indicate in an analog fashion through the LED the amount of DC voltage present in the line. As you may have guessed, this is an entry into the op amp challenge, but it's not the first tricked out breadboard we've seen.
Oh.
By a long shot.
But it may be the most tricked out breadboard we've seen in a way. I don't know. It's pretty crazy.
It is. It is pretty crazy.
Was the breadboard itself completely handmade?
It was printed, and then the guts from a regular solderless breadboard were liberated and shoved inside.
Oh, it's a transplant breadboard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because the LEDs are like embedded into the sides of the breadboard where usually the power rails go or whatever. This one has a bunch of lights showing the status of each row, which is so crazy awesome, but only works because it's a transparent breadboard. So it's a gutted normal breadboard.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That is a rat's nest of wires.
That's the truth.
Pretty much insane. That's a lot of LEDs, though.
Yeah, well.
You got to do what you got to do.
The more the better, right?
Agreed. Each one of them is buffered by an op amp. 15 quad op amps. That is absolutely mental. Kudos.
And all the wires.
My next hack is actually going to be 2 hacks, almost equally simple and almost equally impressive in their optics. The first one, Clever Optics Makes Clock Digits Float in Space, is a project from Hackaday alum Moritz von Sievers. It is him trying to play around, with an optical pathway that's suggested in a Japanese research paper. It's basically like a Pepper's Ghost kind of thing where you reflect the image up from underneath that you want to see onto like a 45-degree pane of glass. Except here, the pane of glass is an actual 50-50 reflective mirror, but instead of shining the light up directly into the mirror, it goes up the back, hits a retroreflector, and then gets reflected out forward. One of the cool tricks is that he actually has the digits, they're on little LED panels, and he actually has them flip like vertically sideways. But it makes them actually physically look like they're flipping, which with the 3D effect must look really, really cool. I haven't seen it in real life. He's got a stereo view of it. If you can go cross-eyed, you can watch it in the video and see what it should look like if you were there viewing it live.
My eyes.
Anyway, this clock is a neat demo for an interesting take on the kind of usual old Pepper's Ghost illusion. Fiberpunk's project, Holograms Display Time with ESP32, is actually a much more straight up Pepper's Ghost. Here he uses a really sweet looking beam splitter prism to do, basically the same thing. It's a 45-degree mirror. And this enables the ESP32 and OLED screen underneath to make you kind of a video that's floating in space. These are small little desk accessories that he's made, and they look super sweet for it. It basically projects an image that looks like it's floating inside this cube of glass, as long as you don't realize that the cube of glass has a 45-degree beam splitter on the inside.
Like before, you gotta do what you gotta do.
I like all these. We've seen a ton of hologram, in quotes, Pepper's Ghosty kind of projects on Hackaday, and I swear, some of them are so cool. I'm gonna have to find the one. There was one where this guy did a video and he had multiple different Pepper's Ghost-like projectors around his room, and they were kind of all working together, coordinated. And so you could have an image slip off of one onto another.
Whoa.
And it looked really cool. There you go. Boom. First hit. Who is Mr. Search Engine today? Me, ladies and gentlemen.
My next hack is Hackaday Prize 2023, The Realities of the Homework Machine. And this comes from Devadath PR. Now,
Uh-oh.
there's more than one way to improve education, right?
Yeah.
So figuring out how to build a homework machine might be an outlier, but that's okay, right? Or is it? Is it okay?
I have no idea.
Glad I'm not a teacher, or a student for that matter, these days. But basically the idea is you can stick in a worksheet or a blank piece of paper, and this thing will mimic Devadath, in this case Devadath PR's handwriting, to complete the assignment. And that's crazy to me. That's crazy. But here's how it works. Devadath used a tablet and a Python script to record samples of their handwriting and used ChatGPT to come up with the answers, which of course is probably not a way to improve education.
It's totally cheating.
Yeah, it's totally cheating. But on the other hand, how much do you think Devadath learned from building this thing? Probably a lot. But
Absolutely tons.
But how much of it will apply to the real world? Not that they teach you, not that they teach you that much real world stuff in school anyway.
Is putting together your own HBot pen plotter an education in and of itself? Sure it is. Is that using that to cheat on essays? Does that justify it? I don't know. I think we're being conned here. I think this is secretly an art project, and this is not a real serious proposal to cheat on homework using a pen plotter. I think this is what if you could build a machine that would, right?
Hopefully.
Don't know if we're meant to take this at face value or take this as commentary on kind of where we're at. And I think that's lovely. I'm happy being confused by this and worried about it. But there's like a photo in the Hackaday IO write-up of different samples, and it's like, can you identify which one was written by me and which one was written by the machine? And man, I don't know what the answer is. Like, I'm not 100% sure. It's definitely fantastic. Is this an awesome pen bot? Is this a comment on rote learning versus creativity? I'm at a loss, but it's a beautiful Core XY machine. Is this a warning sign? Like, should we be worried about the future right now?
Yes.
Should I be worried that I think it's hilarious? I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah. Have you got any sort of plotting able bot in your house, Kristina?
I wish.
You should.
I should.
I can imagine you'd enjoy that, actually.
I would.
Yeah.
Enjoy that.
All right. I know what to get you for Christmas.
Oh, hooray.
A subscription to Hackaday where you can read about how to make your own.
Gee, thanks.
All right, my last hack is, it's hacks of the past. This is the forgotten rescue of the Salyut 7 space station. And I picked this one just because it is so crazy, incredible, and I had no idea. This is a write-up over at astronomy.com about the two cosmonauts who were sent up when the Soviet Salyut 7 space station in 1985 went black. Like all of the power shut down all of its systems. This was a precursor to Mir, a precursor to Skylab. This is one of the series, though, of Soviet space stations that honestly I don't know nearly enough about. And we should probably get someone to do a feature article on because that's so crazy cool. They apparently had space stations from 1971 to 1986, including the world's first, the Salyut 1. They were also probably doing, at the time, Cold War-y military things with them. And, there may be a darker side to all of this. It could be a really interesting story. Anyway, Hackaday relevant is that Salyut 7 went dead in 1985, and they shot 2 people up there to see if they could dock with it and fire it back up. And this is a crazy space story. Of the 2, pardon my Russian, Vladimir Jahanabekov had actually done a manual docking with the Salyut 7 before because its docking mechanism wasn't working the last time he was up there. And so he was chosen to head the mission, and his fellow cosmonaut Viktor Savinc went with him. The 2 of them got up there, and the doors have this computer talks to each other on either side of it interlock system. So they had to, just getting into the powered down space station was trouble. And of course, then they go in there through one airlock after the other, and everything is black and cold and powered down. And I just can't imagine how absolutely terrifying.
This is like a sci-fi movie.
Yeah. The whole thing is exactly like a sci-fi movie, except it was totally real and it totally happened. They had a way down, right? They came up there with a functioning Soyuz rocket and they had a trip back down. So, if things went bad and didn't go horribly bad, they would have had their ticket home. So it's creepy, but it's not entirely dire. On the other hand, the pictures that they took of themselves working in there, they're in full winter gear because it was the cold of sub-zero, cold of space, right? And initially they had no power, no lights. They opened the windows up and could, at least get a little solar in for a while. I don't know if they know what the problem was in the end, but in this write-up anyway, it says that they hooked the batteries back up, managed to reorient the thing using some of the power from their Soyuz rocket so that they could get the solar panels charging back again, and eventually got the thing back up and running. It took them 10 days to save the space station, and those must have been the 10 creepiest days of their lives. And what is their reward for having pulled off this heroic early proto-space station rescue mission? The answer is it's to stay up there for a while, because as long as they're there, they might as well live in the space station. And so one of them was up there for another 110 days, the other for 168. Yeah, knowing that you just saved the thing from, kind of catastrophic failure. This is like DIY space stationing at this point. This is hardcore. They know how to fix the thing. And they're like, yeah, we'll just stay up there for a few months.
That's crazy. This is why women live longer than men.
Because they wouldn't do this?
Probably.
I wouldn't do this in a million years. What do you mean? You're not going to live longer than I am. I'm staying here on the ground. They should make a movie.
They should make a movie. There should already be a movie.
How is it that I've seen Apollo 13, but I haven't seen Salyut 7?
My next tag is Easter's over, but you can still dye keycaps. And that's true of the whole year, really. This comes from Amphiboy, who is standing on the shoulders of Crowning Knight, who did it first, or at least did it first and wrote it up and put it on Imgur. Yeah, I say Imgur instead of Imgur.
Fine by me.
Evidently, Rit has done an exceptional job with creating these color mixing recipes for their dyes. This is not the first time I've heard about this. So as long as you follow it, it's very, very accurate to the samples. This is what I've heard anyway, and I'm tempted to do it myself now, because it just seems fun. And I happen to have some blank white PBT keycaps.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently you also need a bit of dish soap, or as one commenter said, perhaps acetone, for unknown reasons. Perhaps it makes the color bond better with the keycaps. Anyway, who are we to question? But they turned out beautifully, and I have to agree that the orange ones look like cheese. I hadn't thought about that before, but they definitely look like cheese. And the other ones look like candy, so I'd have a hard time not snacking on my keyboard. I don't know. I'm gonna have to choose different colors if I do this. But yeah, they are beautiful. They look very even and nice, but it'll be interesting to see how they stand up over time. Just like to see how they look with shine on them from fingers, and if the color changes at all. I could maybe see it darkening a little bit where the fingertips go, but it might be hard to discern from just shine. I'm not sure. But PBT is not supposed to shine, at least not as fast as ABS. So time will tell.
They certainly do look absolutely beautiful. They look like somehow fake. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Something about this kind of uniform color of them just looks, doesn't it?
Yeah, kinda.
I don't know.
You looking at the main image of mine, or?
Yeah, or any of them on the write up too.
Is it the shadows? Is it the lighting?
It's
Maybe
beautiful
the lighting.
illumination or something. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have no doubt that they're real, but yeah, I hope the dye stays in there. The keyboard itself is kind of made in like diagonal color stripes using this palette, and he's gonna get red middle fingers and orange first fingers and blue pinkies, and if the dye doesn't hold. I mean, actually, I suppose it will.
I think it will.
But yeah,
I hope it will.
the dyeing process took me probably 3 to 4 hours. What?
Probably just because all the colors.
Lots of different colors and lots of rinsing and stuff, I guess. Yeah.
Because you only have to cook it for, they only did the yellow ones for 2 minutes.
All right.
Ended up doing it for 2 minutes because the 5 minutes were too bright.
And so this is what? Dish soap plus dye plus warm water on the stove, and boom, you're done.
Yeah.
All right. My first quick hack this week: minimal USB device connects with just a couple of resistors from TM. This is an experiment to see how little you need to get something to show up, at least to your operating system, as a USB device, if not a valid one. And the answer is just a couple resistors to pull up the D plus or D minus lines, and boom, you've got your Windows system going bing bing, or it showing up in dmessage in Linux. Of course, there's no microcontroller in there to talk back to the computer when it asks what kind of USB device it is. So it won't turn a couple resistors into anything useful, but the whole experiment was just kind of to see how far along the USB physical layer negotiation setup you have to be to get it recognized by your operating system. And the answer is not much, just a pull up on the data lines. Next up, making music by probing magnetite crystals, and this by Moscow tech artist VTOL, whose projects I've been following forever on Hackaday now. This one has two kind of probes, and it looks kind of like a spider or something. And the probes are held by servos, and it pokes at these magnetite crystals in different places, like you would probe a cat whisker with an old-timey crystal radio set or something. And it uses the different electrical connections it finds to turn it into this like eerie music. It's a really great art project, and I just love watching it go. And last up, CNC Feeds and Speeds, explained as a first-timer by Callan Bryant. This is an article about him trying to help a friend get their homemade CNC machine up and running. It's a tale of blunted bits and running things too fast and too slow, and how to avoid doing all that. Callan admits by the time he's done with this that he's only cut a couple things on this machine and he hasn't gotten it all dialed in yet. And in the comments, a lot of people chime in with their various practical hints toward setting up a home CNC machine. And so it's a worthwhile read, both for Callan's post and for the comments.
You're actually recommending the comments?
I do that. Whenever the comments are good, I recommend them. It happens from time to time.
All right, my first quick hack goes inside a pair of smart sunglasses with Becky Stern. Now, this is the Ray-Ban Stories glasses, which are really, honestly, remarkably pretty thin and small, considering the amount of stuff that's packed inside, cameras and microphones that, obviously, allow you to record first-person video quite easily. So, naturally, Becky wore them around for a while and made some cool New York City videos, of which I'm quite jealous. And the teardown started with sending the things off for CT scans, which I thought was pretty cool. I guess they didn't show the flex PCBs that ran through the hinges, which Becky accidentally broke during the teardown. But that's okay, that's why they call it a teardown, right? And she didn't probably expect them to work after the Dremel came out. Next up is tiny 3D printed gaming PC contains real retro hardware. This comes from the Eric Experiment. So the Eric Experiment has created a 486. If you're into retro computing, you know that the stuff is big and bulky and piles up pretty quickly. So the trick to shrinking down the 486 is to use the motherboard out of an old industrial PC, evidently, because all the components are on ISA cards. And in fact, the whole thing is it's ISA cards all the way down, and you can pretty easily make it into a small and sleek retro computer. The real love I have for this is in the case, because it's just beautiful. It has every last detail. There's a moving latch on the fake floppy drive, and there's a hidden door that reveals the USB connector for the floppy emulator. That's wonderful. Last up is thermal camera plus machine learning reads passwords off keyboard keys. Now, this is a study by researchers at the University of Glasgow. And while it's not exactly news that fingertips leave small amounts of heat behind on keyboard keys, which can be picked up by thermal sensors, if you add in machine learning, it turns out you can do it much faster and with higher accuracy, even after the fingertips have been gone for up to a minute. The system can detect, for instance, a 6-character password with 92% accuracy. And I believe the 16-character password was only at 55% accuracy on average, but that's still pretty crazy, I think.
Assuming, I guess, you type in your password and then walk away.
Yeah.
When would you ever do this?
I don't know.
I type in my password and then I go to work. I do it the exact opposite. But I guess you get them to type in your password and then you fool them into leaving.
Emergency phone call, well timed.
Right? ABS keycaps retain heat far more effectively than PBT. Yet another reason
I'm
you
not
want
surprised.
PBT.
Yeah.
PBT keycaps.
All the way. Ride or die, PBT.
And that brings us to our Can't Miss articles. These are long-form pieces written by our own fantastic Hackaday writing staff. This week I'm picking Lewin Day's Ask Hackaday, Why Do Self-Driving Cars Keep Causing Traffic Jams? This is actually an Ask Hackaday. We don't know the answer, and I don't know if anyone does. But in the past couple months, there have been a number of stories coming out of San Francisco, which is, as far as I know, the only city in America that's running kind of large-scale test of autonomously driven taxis. And most of them run at night there when there's not so much traffic around, but some also run during the daytime. And there have been 15 or 20 reports of them doing strange things and causing traffic troubles, including entire convoys of 10 of them just driving slowly down the street and stopping everyone behind them. It's hard, I think, for the cars to know what to do when they run into emergency situations. Like there's one story of policemen who were cordoning off a firefighting zone and the car really kind of wanted to go through, and it was kind of like slowly trying to edge into fire emergency zone. And one of the police officers recorded this on a body cam, so there's of course humorous footage of it all. The good news is all it takes to stop one of these things from going forward is you stand in front of it, right? Like notices that you're a person and it doesn't run you over. The bad news here is that that takes away a police officer from directing traffic elsewhere. So it's, it's kind of a public safety problem. The police officer with the body cam in this video, you should watch it. It's pretty funny. Decides that he's going to light flares in front of it, and that will convince it to stop. And he tries to light flares in front of, I think it was a cruise taxi, but it doesn't actually. They ended up having to stand in front of it with people and call in. It's funny because I remember reading about this sort of thing when they were first proposing to run autonomous vehicle testing in San Francisco. There was a heavy PR push from the companies involved to try to say, we're reaching out to fire officials and police to help educate them about how they can deal with our cars when they need to shut them down. And I think that's part of the problem here. If you are driving an ambulance and the self-driving vehicle isn't getting out of the way fast enough, that's a problem. If it's blocking access to a fire site, that's a problem. But these two situations have entirely different solutions. In the case of the ambulance, the thing needs to move. It needs to pull out of the way and get the heck out of the way so the ambulance can go through. And in the case of the fire situation, it needs to stop and not keep driving where it wants to go. And I don't know that there's a good one-size-fits-all solution for these kind of edge cases. And what I think is really interesting about all this, of course, is that these self-driving cars are now working well enough that we're worried about these really bizarre edge cases and not the normal, like, day-to-day driving through intersection stuff. But now the problem is, there's an emergency in the road, which is something that's not in its big training set. How does it move around this? And so I think it's, on one hand, really cool that we're there. But on the other, it does raise kind of, these public safety problems that if the cars aren't adapted to all of these edge cases that, although they happen infrequently, still happen all the time. And how we're going to navigate through that situation. Yeah, you can head off to the comments to this. I think, frankly, a couple people who are anti-car kind of derailed the comments here and said...
Pun intended.
Yeah, wait. And said self-driving cars aren't the answer. It's trains are the way to go. And if these were self-driving trains, they'd already be on the tracks and there'd be no problem. I think that's true in some kind of idealistic world. The article's about how to improve self-driving cars, though, people. Stay on target.
I think we should give up.
You think we should give up on self-driving cars?
Yes.
I haven't been in enough of them to say.
I don't need to go into one. I don't want to go in one. I don't want to be in traffic with one.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is something to be said for that it's a little bit weird to be forcing all the other traffic participants to be in this experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a little bit bizarre. But on the other hand, if you look at the kind of accidents that the Cruise and Waymo vehicles have been having, they're actually all extremely conservative. Like, they get rear-ended because they stop unexpectedly or they drive too slowly. It's not like they're out there running people over or crashing into stuff like the driver assistance features of some other company that I'm not going to name so I don't get a lawsuit or the fanboys up against me. But the Waymo and Cruise cars actually seem to know what they're doing, and they drive like the stereotypical grandmother or something. And so mostly what happens is they become a traffic inconvenience by being ironically too slow and too safe. And like one of these anecdotal stories is there are 4 of them at an intersection and they kind of deadlocked each other because the autonomous cars couldn't figure out who was supposed to go first, right? And so they all just kind of got stuck. That's the sort of thing that's really interesting here. But it's not that they're running over cyclists. It's that they get confused and they don't know what to do. There's also some speculation that they run into Wi-Fi dead zones and they can't phone home. And that's part of the problem in some of these places. I think, honestly, we need someone who works for either Waymo or Cruise to leak to us because I don't know if they're telling what's going on in all of these situations. And
oh, hack chat.
Yeah, right? And maybe that's something that the people overseeing this in San Francisco should be demanding of them, is to at least know what the heck is going on when they sit there blocking the street for 13 minutes.
You know what's close to San Francisco? Pasadena.
That's true.
You know what happens in Pasadena?
It's SuperCon.
Yep. You know what we need for SuperCon?
What?
Speakers.
Oh, yeah, totally.
I'm saying it's a short jaunt to Pasadena, if any San Francisco-based
Oh,
driverless car engineers.
want to come down and give us the poop.
Yeah.
That would be lovely.
Speaking of cars and drivers, for my can't miss this week, I chose Retro Gadgets. I swear, officer, I was listening to 45s by Al Williams. Boy, you know, for about as long as there's been driving, there's been distracted driving, I would think.
Probably.
Whether it's horses in the road or a record player under the dash.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, for about 6 years, you could get a car with a record player under the dash. Roughly 1955 to 1961, the golden years. I always wondered how they made this feasible, because I've known about this for a long time, but I didn't have any idea about the interesting solution. So you're probably familiar with 33 and 45 RPM records, and maybe even 78s, but there are also 16 RPM records, which are very large, and they play very slowly. So what they did was they made a 16 RPM record in a 7-inch format with a very, very tight pitch groove and a really tiny stylus under really high pressure. So it's kind of, I imagine if we can go this direction with technology, it's sort of like the slot-fed CD player, kind of. A little bit.
Yeah.
It didn't work out very well, but they were pretty cool. It's a cool piece of history.
Yeah. Kind of a brute force solution, isn't it?
Yeah, but what are you going to do?
I like Al's conclusion here as well, that like this is something that people clearly wanted, like to play their own music in the car. And we kind of take that for granted now, but you have to imagine, you know, before this, there was really only radio. And if you wanted to listen to something you wanted to listen to, you could listen to a record when you got back home. He says it's an idea that was before its time, right? And what happened, of course, is that tapes came along, and the 8-track tape, I guess, in particular, was put into cars, and then regular cassette tapes. I don't know. Actually, I don't know which one came first among those two. I wasn't there.
Were there ever reel-to-reels in cars?
Ooh, I imagine. Like, I think James Bond had a reel-to-reel tape player in one of his cars, right? Like, 1960s James Bond must have had to listen to instructions on a reel-to-reel player in the, like,
Sweet.
glove box, right?
Yeah.
It's funny that it ended up being such a short-lived technology, in the sense that the technology itself was short-lived. Of course, we're all listening to whatever the heck we want in our cars these days. So, you know, the big picture idea is still with us, but records in a car. And I thought CDs skipped bad.
At least those aren't being dug into at high pressure every time you play them.
Oh, God, I know. That does it for this week's Hackaday podcast. Thanks very much for listening. To follow our links or leave comments, head on over to the show notes, hackaday.com/podcast. If you see anything cool or do anything cool, write us an email, tips@hackaday.com. And until next week,
Keep on hacking.
this one's going and the levels look good.
Here we go.
All right. Boy, that was a long-ass rant.
I don't know how to pronounce Rasmus Vilo.
V-I-I-I-O? V-I-I-I-O?
7. Rasmus 7. B-I-I capital I-O. Chat GTP GPT. Chat GPT.
Podcasted.